Good evening from Vietnam. Good morning to you, Ken. Thanks a lot for spending your morning on your vacation time with your wife in Florida and joining our show, sharing your insights on the topic of wisdom. So to help us to improve the quality of our lives through your experience. So on behalf of the listeners around the world, we want to say thank you.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Ken, in our culture, and you've been to my country 10 years ago, right? You probably
Mhm.
met the people here and know the culture here. It's very honor for us to have you to share a little bit about yourself, the work you are doing,
Mhm.
and would you please do that first, please?
Sure, sure. I've had quite a varied experience in my life. I've lived in 6 different countries. I've worked around the world. Initially, I was a corporate banker, lending money to corporations. And then I moved more into organization development, leadership development, executive development over time. I've worked as a consultant, a management consultant as well. I've worked as a project manager, building a banking school in Istanbul for the Turkish Bankers Association. I've done the same advising building banking schools in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union, and even in China, in Beijing for the People's Bank of China. I've consulted for large corporations and for small. I've run businesses. I started 2 consulting businesses. So my experience is very varied. It's all been about helping organizations achieve higher performance, better performance. And I guess I should mention that one of the key things that I'm known for is a book I co-authored called Performance at the Limit: Business Lessons from Formula One Motor Racing, published by Cambridge University Press. It's in its 3rd edition. It's been published in Japanese, Turkish, and Mandarin Chinese. And it's about examining how Formula One teams operate at the height of excellence, combining human factors and technology to achieve greatness and perform at their best during a very grueling season. So I try to take the learnings and experiences from these and share these with executives and organizations around the world.
Wow, wow, you have a phenomenal journey that you share with us in about 70, 80 seconds. That's unfair. So this conversation is about wisdom. So we're gonna travel and then we're gonna examine, what is this in your life, and I'll start with this, okay? So if you now can travel to talk to you when you were really, really young, but just a little boy, okay? And you tell yourself about your journey, in the future, what would you tell that little Ken?
Great question. Great question. Um, when you're young, you're impatient. When you're young, you think you know everything. There was a great bumper sticker that used to go on cars in the US that said, hire a teenager while he still knows everything. And uh, so I think one of the pieces of advice I'd give myself is be a bit more patient. Uh, there's a story about the student who asked the mentor, how can I become as good as you? And the mentor said to the student, get older. Uh, because wisdom comes with age and experience, and that's something we all have heard a lot. Advancing age is inevitable. But what I know now, where I am having worked for 50 years around the world, is that obtaining wisdom is not inevitable. It's something you have to work at. It's something that requires self-awareness. So we age, but we don't necessarily get wisdom unless we really think about what wisdom is and how it reflects on us and other people that we want to share it with.
Wow, wow. Each of us will have our own definition of what is wisdom. So we want to ask you the basic first. So Ken, what is wisdom in your own definition?
Well, I can tell you this. Wisdom is not necessarily knowledge.
Mm.
In my view, wisdom is having knowledge, but more importantly, knowing how and when to apply it in the right situation, at the right time, to the right person. So it's
Mm.
having knowledge, but it's knowing how to apply that knowledge to make it useful and important for someone. Um, and I think wisdom is also about having an outward view so you can connect dots that other people haven't connected, so that your thoughts, your ideas, your offerings are relevant to others. Uh,
Wow.
you know, it's, when we read all these books of great philosophers and wisdom sharers, we often get quite amazed at how relevant what they have to say is to me personally. That's why we
Mm.
love these posters with sayings that, they have in locker rooms, and they have in inspirational sayings, because they strike a nerve for all of us. So
Mm.
these people have found a way, as parents, as teachers, as coaches, as friends, to share something that is useful and relevant for other people. And that, I think, is what's important about wisdom, is that it's something that that resonates with the audience. It's not
Wow.
just information, it's not just data, it's not just knowledge. It's something that transcends all that and becomes useful advice, a tenet, something that makes sense, and you can say, I get that. That's helpful. So that's what I think
This
wisdom is.
this is the first time that I hear this definition of wisdom. I've been interviewed a few already on, about 20. So each we is having a different answer of wisdom. Your answer is very, very beautiful. So I'm noting here is having the knowledge, but knowing when and how to apply, where to apply, to who to apply to make the best, and out of that. And second is to look outward, to connect the dots that other people yet
Hmm.
connecting them, right?
Yes, that's
Yes.
correct. And here's something else which comes to my mind. Wisdom comes hand in hand with tact. Tact, T-A-C-T.
Mm.
Tact is being sensitive in dealing with others or with difficult issues.
Mm.
And I think people who share wisdom successfully get that. They understand that you have to share your wisdom in a way that other people receive it in a positive sense.
Mm.
That, and it goes back to sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience at the right time in the right way.
Yeah.
Um, and tact, I love this word tact, and I've looked up a lot of quotes over the years, because when I've worked with organizations for people to improve communication within their teams, tact is a big part of that. And, we very often talk about organizations and teams need to be sharing information with each other, but that doesn't mean you should be heartless or tactless about how you share that information. Some
Mm.
people are very good at that, and some people aren't. Um, there are two quotes, or several quotes, that I like, but one is from a 19th century educator and ambassador diplomat named Henry Van Dyke, and he said, "Tact is the unsaid part of what you think."
Wow.
Tact is the unsaid part of what you think.
Wow.
Um, and I think, again, tying it to wisdom, wisdom is about sharing the right words, the right ideas, the right thoughts, the right philosophies at the right time.
Mm.
Um, there's one other I like from a guy named Wilson Misner, who was a playwright in the U.S. in the early 20th century. Um, he said, "In the battle of existence, talent is the punch, tact is the clever footwork." Tact is
Wow.
the clever word. Isn't that lovely? It's about
Yeah.
dancing around, using clever, you're using what you know, but using it in the right way at the right time.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So we're gonna get into tech later. I wanna go to the fundamental that you mentioned earliest, which is the knowledge. All right. So because that is the fundamental of of us to gather the knowledge first, so that we can use later at the right time with the right people, right? So knowledge comes from everywhere, and in the world of too many information like this, how can I safeguard myself to get only the knowledge that important, relevant, and useful for our works and our life?
Well, sometimes, as you know, you don't know what's important until you're halfway down the road and you look back. So, I think knowledge is about keeping an open mind.
Mm.
Knowledge is about expanding the sources from where you get your information. And in today's world, with social media and everything we've seen from elections and other things, people get into their echo chambers and don't expand their knowledge. They only stay in the knowledge of what they hear within that echo chamber.
Mm.
The other thought that comes to mind, and I was privileged to have this, and I was very pleased that my children wanted to have this, knowledge is about, I think, a liberal education. And by that I mean one where you can explore different parts of the world and what it has to offer, science and literature and art, until you really understand where you want to focus your thinking and your time.
Mm.
So if you want to be an engineer, you could benefit by having taken courses in literature or astronomy or art appreciation, because knowledge is such a broad thing and everything is connected. And
Mm.
if you only travel down a narrow path of knowledge, you become an expert at it, but you
Mm.
wouldn't have had the chance to assimilate so much more.
Mm.
So I think being open-minded, and as long as you can, and even later in life, reading outside of your area of expertise to get greater knowledge, or watching documentaries or whatever it is, that's what knowledge is about, I think. It's a wide range of inputs to allow you to connect more dots over time, to allow you to share wisdom over
Wow.
time.
Wow. So you mentioned the word that connect, which is very important because in my life I met a lot of people like we call dictionaries. They know everything. They have the knowledge of a lot of things, but making that knowledge becoming meaningful is not something that they are capable of doing that. So if the people that with open-minded, and gather information, how can we push them a little bit, help them to bring the knowledge into actions and make valuable things out of that for other people and for their lives?
Well, there are different roles for different people, and some people are great researchers, great academics. They do a lot of important work that doesn't easily necessarily translate to pragmatic, practical use for everyone. And one of the things that I've been proud that I've been able to do is bridge a bit of academia and a bit of pragmatic sharing. So taking useful ideas and research, but making them useful for
Mm.
executives in my world. Um, we've all been in business, and we've had to deal with information technology and IT experts who come to work with us, and we have no clue what they're saying. And
Mm.
so there's always needs to be someone who can translate the technology and the vocabulary to make it useful for me as a user. I don't need to know what's inside the machine. I just
Mm.
need to know how to apply it. So I think it's in part allowing people go their way as in their specific areas of expertise, but someone, if they're not able to someone has to be able to translate what they're saying and make it useful and pragmatic. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so we allow them to do it, and then along the way, having somebody else that be able to translate that into actions, and then being come into the picture, right?
I think so. I mean, knowledge for knowledge's sake is important in many respects, but knowledge to make it relevant and useful is even more important for our everyday lives. It's translating great research in medicine, but making it useful for a vaccine or making it useful for a medication. And there have to be some people who are in the between these two, the researchers and the product developers, who can translate the two. You know, we often talk about Steve Jobs and the work he did. I mean, highly technical business of creating what he did at Apple, but he made it relevant and useful. They used to tell a story about he and Wozniacki, when they started up building the first Apple computers, they would design it and then test it with Wozniacki's mother, because if she could not use it, they felt they hadn't created a bridge across the divide of technology and user interface. So it's one thing to have knowledge, but it's one thing to make it useful and shareable with others.
Wow. And that is wisdom right there. Okay? Because make things that useful, applicable for other people sounds very simple, but the process is very complicated, and it involves a lot of different kind of thinking, different way of looking at things that we have at hands, right? So if, in your opinion, what should we do? What should we learn? What should we apply to have the mentality, the mindset of make things being useful, make things being applicable to the lives of that we live in, the lives of others?
I'll give you one thought, and that's tell stories.
Tell stories.
People relate to and remember things when the message is embodied in a story. And the great communicators, the great leaders who communicate well, are great at telling stories to get the message across. It's one thing to put up a slide, a PowerPoint slide with bullet points. It's another to embody what's being said on that slide in a story that people can relate to. So I think that's the key to sharing knowledge. You know, most wisdom comes across as a kind of a story. I think, you know, even these one-liners that I described to you before. Here's another one that I wanted to share. Tact is the ability to describe others as they see themselves. Tact is the ability to describe others as they see themselves. And it's been said that Abraham Lincoln said that. That's a story in itself. That phrase tells a story. You can picture somebody talking to someone else in a way in which they're making that person feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
But maybe sharing a hard message at the same time.
Wow. So target the ability to see others as they see themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They see themselves. Because your job isn't it to have people.
I'm sorry. Hi, they're cutting some, mowing some lawn outside. I hope it's not disturbing the broadcast.
We don't hear anything, so it's
Perfect,
all good.
perfect.
It's okay. So the question I have is, the job that you are doing is to help people to see beyond what they can see of themselves, right? Become better leaders, you know, become better managers, become better, you know, community contributors. So tact is the ability to see others, they see themselves. Now you go beyond it. How can we find that tact to help the people that not only they see themselves in the way that we started telling, but see the potentials of them and what they could be?
Well, that's where experience comes in, isn't it? That's where we learn from our failures and our mistakes. We learn where we've perhaps made an error in our communication and suffered for it because we weren't tactful enough,
Mm,
or we maybe had shared some wisdom that we thought was wisdom that didn't resonate with someone else.
mm,
So I think we learn about these things back to where we started. Aging is inevitable, but wisdom comes from experience, and
mm.
it comes from experience on reflecting how we have succeeded or not succeeded in what we've been trying to achieve and how we've been trying to communicate.
Wow. So that leading to the second part of the knowledge part, where you say that when to say, who to say, and what to say, and those are very gut feelings that leading the way, right? So is I might think that, oh, this is the right moment for I to say it. It
Hmm.
turn out it's some terrible mistakes. So how do we sense that it's the right kind of moment to say the right kind of message, the right kind of people?
That's an excellent question. And it reminds me, about 20 years ago, I wrote a book with Alan Catcher called Managing Your Strengths. And it's
Mm,
based on the life orientations method that he and one other person, Stuart Atkins, had created maybe 50 years ago. It's not as well known as Myers-Briggs and Kilman and all these other DISC and others that people use, but it's very effective. And it has a couple of key principles. One is that our strength can be our biggest weakness. This, we call it the strength weakness paradox. Over time, we become very confident with strategies and approaches that work. Those are our strengths. But
mm,
sometimes if we use them, our strengths, too strongly or in the wrong situation, it becomes less effective.
mm,
So that's number one. Number two, it's now called the platinum rule, but we talked about it 30, 40 years ago. It's treat others the way they want to be treated, as
ah,
opposed to the old treat others the way that you want them to treat you. And so this gets to the heart of your question. It's about having antenna that read other people. And how do you read other people? You read them by their body language. You read them
mm,
by their eye contact. You read them by how they say things to you. And you read them by your experience. That
mm,
you've seen this before. I've encountered someone like this before. And then reaching into your toolkit and using your behaviors and your approach that's going to
mm.
work with someone who's displaying those kinds of attributes, those kinds of behaviors.
Wow.
So knowing when to say something or how to say it is based on, as you said, some instincts, some internal instincts, but those instincts come from having been there before.
Mm,
Uh, when I was in high school and college, I was a goalkeeper in soccer and football, and I did quite well. In fact, I still have an Ivy League record. I went to Yale for the most career saves by a goalkeeper. And it also tells you that our team wasn't all that effective in scoring, so I was very busy. But I had a very good coach who was from Austria. He coached us, and then he went to work in the North American Soccer League, and he created soccer or football training camps around the United States. He became quite well known. His name is, he's passed away last year, Hubert
oh,
Vogelsinger. And when I used to go out to practice with him, his main mantra was, we're going to do things, everything, every kind of cross, every kind of shot, every kind of pass, so that when you encounter it in a game, you will have seen it before and you will know how to react to it. So when a certain ball came in, my mind, my body said subconsciously, I've experienced this before. Now I know how to handle this situation. And I think the same is true in our interpersonal relationships. Over the years, again, age brings wisdom and knowledge. We have encountered so many different kinds of situations that we should be able to build up repository of experience and knowledge to know how to handle different situations when we encounter them. That's where age and experience bring wisdom, because we've seen it before and we can now handle it because, I recognize this. And if you get it wrong, you do the other thing we talked about. You would have some self-reflection. What went wrong here? Did I misread that person? Or did I use my strength too strongly? Did I come on too strong to this person? And then you take that learning and you put that away inside and you save it for the next time.
Wow. Ken, you remember things in your life, the conversation the coach talked to you, and coach you on the field, the conversation you had with other co-authors that you had, and out of your busy life with so many other things to do. So a lot of us, we just forget yesterday what was said to us, that wisely said to us, that we should be listening and apply it to our lives. And how could you remember things that important to you for that many years as the busy goalkeeper for right? And still remember up until now to use it very effectively to share in this conversation.
Well, let's go back to the very first thing I said. Advancing age, getting old is inevitable. Obtaining wisdom is not. To obtain wisdom, we need to be self-aware and reflect.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I often reflected on what people have said to me. I respected most of my teachers, and I learned to think, okay, this is something I should take into consideration. And in the best cases, I was able to incorporate what they've said into my own behaviors and my own way of thinking, my own mindsets, and use those to raise children, to raise grandchildren, to be a husband, to be a teacher, to be a consultant, to be an author. So maybe I've been lucky. I've had a great education. I've had great influences. But go back to something I said early on also about obtaining knowledge. I've always tried to have an open mind. And I've made some wrong steps. I graduated from university with a degree in engineering, but I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So when I graduated from Yale, I went and studied medicine in Paris for a year. That's in fact when I met my first person from Vietnam. We became tennis partners. I can remember this so well. But after a year in Paris, which I loved, and my French became fluent, I realized maybe I didn't want to go this direction. Maybe I didn't want to study anymore. So I came back to the United States and I bought a book which was new in those days, but it's become very popular. It's called What Color is Your Parachute? And it took me through some very basic exercises, which become very common now. Writing up your biography, writing your epitaph, listing your strengths, things, what do you like to do, what do you need to do. And that helped ground me to think about, okay, this is who I am at this very young age of 21, 22, but this is where I think I really want to go. And that brought me to Citibank and the Management Development Program. And from there, I was like a sponge. So I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but in my background, it was about finally finding who I wanted to be, or thought I wanted to be, and going in that direction.
And at 21 years old, you asked yourself
21, 22, yeah.
Wow. Because I write down here earlier in our conversation, I say wisdom is something that we have to work on. Okay, and I circle it in the red. So at what age you came up with the idea that wisdom is not something that it comes naturally, but we have to consciously and proactively working on it?
Um, it partly was a function of I was open to new opportunities, new jobs, new situations, living in different countries, dealing with different languages. Back to being open-minded.
Mm.
Um, after I worked in Citibank in New York for 6 years, they finally sent me abroad. I kept saying I wanted to go back abroad after my year in Paris. And they sent me to London. And there I taught other Citibankers. I taught risk management, I taught selling skills, negotiating skills. And then I went up to Finland to head up the corporate bank. And that was a whole new environment. So, anyone who's lived abroad and had to deal with a different culture and a different language, if you're not open-minded, you're not going to succeed.
Mm.
So here I was back in banking, and that's where I met my wife. And then we went to Istanbul, where they gave me a dilapidated hotel on the Marmara Sea and said, turn it into a world-class residential training center. And then we went to Brussels, where I joined a department in Citibank that did consulting for other banks, and found myself working in Hungary before the wall came down, and found myself in Beijing in 1988, advising the People's Bank of China on establishing their first financial training center. I can go on of all these different experiences and the consulting businesses I started, and my work in Africa and Middle East and Pakistan and other places.
It's okay.
But,
Then no, it's not going to come. Yeah.
For me, it's quite annoying because he's driving by on his mower.
Yeah.
But it's about being open for learning. And along the way, and I guess we should have started here because you actually mentioned it early on about when you told me a little story about your grandfather.
Yeah.
Having values, deciding where you stand on important issues about people and life and religion and whatever it might be, and maintaining those set of values along the way, and sharing those values with your family and living those values. So again, I'm rambling a little bit here, but I'm just trying to share some thoughts.
Yeah, sorry for the distraction. So if you're comfortable, we can continue, or if not, we can, start a different day to continue this topic. I don't want to break the flow.
No, we can continue. This is fine, huh? Good.
Okay. So at 21 years old, you sat down, you read the book, you sat down, you asked yourself a big question about who you are, what you want to do, you find your values, you find your purpose. And normally it's a little bit too early for an adult, a young adult, right? So what practice did you use back then to figure out, your North Star?
Well, let me first say this. I was lucky, as I said, to have a liberal education. So while I was taking engineering courses and pre-med courses, all in the sciences, I took courses in theater and literature and history of art, in history. And over the years, those are the ones, of course, I remember. I can't remember any physics formulas anymore and advanced calculus and all these things that I was doing. So there was something in me that perhaps said that's really where my life should be, and more non-science based. You don't know when you're 21 really what you want to do, but there are countries where when you're 16, 17, you have to decide, am I going an economics route? Am I going a medical route? And I find that quite amazing that we're forcing some of our young teenagers to decide early on in their lives what path they're going to continue. It's true in Scandinavia, I can tell you that. So 21 is an age, 22 is an age where you're still trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure who you are, what kind of relationships you want. This worked out for me, but as I started to describe my work journey, you saw I was doing different things, which suited me well. I was a banker, I was a teacher, I was a project manager, running a huge project to renovate an old hotel. Then I was a consultant. I was a people manager. I was a leader. I was an advisor. This has suited me.
Wow.
For someone else, they go a path and they want to stay in that lane and they're very happy with their lives, and great. We need people who do all kinds of things. For me, this was great.
You say open mind, okay? And open mind, you're not only open-minded to ideas to come, but you're also open-minded to execute those ideas that made you moving from, one job to the next job, one country to the next country, one profession to the next profession, and get yourself become an expert in whatever that territory you got into. Teach us how to be that open-minded, not only to get information in, but also open-minded to try out and be immersed into the action.
Well, we all somehow, if we are self-reflective and we are self-aware, tap into what it is that makes us who we are and what we want to be. For some, it might be in a lab, sitting with your computer and your research, and that could build happiness for you for the rest of your life. For some of us, we enjoy sharing what we know, helping other people learn what they need to know. My dad was a coach and a teacher before he went into business. My sister was a teacher. Perhaps some of that rubbed off on me, that there's a great life to be offered for helping other people learn and grow. Some of us want to be stars. Some of us want to be support to the stars. I wrote a book a couple of years ago during COVID called Exploding Turkeys and Spare Trousers, Adventures in Global Business. And it's 53 short stories from my experiences and the lessons I've learned from that experience. And they're only one page long. And one of them talks about a course I took back in the 80s. It was a managing people course. And we had coaches helping us learn and grow during that course. And he asked me to vision a situation where I was influencing others as a leader, as a manager. And he said, use any kind of metaphor you want. And I thought of playing basketball, which I also loved to do before I was playing soccer and football. And he said, well, what's your position on the court? And I said, I'm a point guard. He said, why? I said, because I love making a great pass and feeding someone who could score.
Oh.
And he said, well, don't you like to shoot? I said, yeah, I love to score, but I get great enjoyment of helping someone else score. I get a great buzz from making a very good pass or making a move to open someone up on the court so they get a great shot. And and when I reflect on that, my career has often been in a position where I'm not the person out front, but I'm the person just behind the person out front. And the chief of staff, if you will, the person making things happen, but through the person who wants to be up front. And I never felt I needed the spotlight or wanted the spotlight. But like I said to him, I like to shoot, I like to score. I love being in front of audiences. I love speaking. I love writing. I love teaching. But I never felt I needed that to help influence other people. I found ways to make good things happen without necessarily being the star of the show.
Wow.
So I don't know if that, again, I'm running off on a tangent here, but you're triggering thoughts in my head which I haven't had in years.
Wow, I love that answer. That's beautiful. And wow, I interview a lot of people. This is the first time that I hear this is so beautiful. I'm gonna talk to my family right after this, sharing the story that you love to be in the back to support and let people shine instead of, I know that there's a lot of people like that. It's the first time that you hear something from the one that you interview. That really wowed me. That I really enjoy, that, Ken. And a lot of us would not know what we truly want in life. Okay, so even last year, I was a different version myself last year, the year before that, the year before that, and every year I'm trying to still understanding what is that high is and what he wants to do, what he wants to do next, right? So how can we help people to be able to know at least the fundamental core of what they are and what they should
Mm.
be doing?
Yeah, well, someone who's part of the Marshall Goldsmith 100 coaches, I would say, hire a coach and help them, let them help you walk yourself through the process of figuring out what you want, what you want to improve in your life. Um, it's work. You have to have a mindset that I want to make some changes. I want to look at myself, warts and all, to see what's working, what's not working. And there are countless exercises you can find online or in self-help books or through a coach about trying to understand what you're good at, what you need to be happy, what you want to do, what you want to change. So part of the discovery is just self-reflection of who am I, where do I want to be, how do I determine where I want to be. There's no easy answer here. It's really some work, and dedicating some of your time and your life. One of the big questions we talk about these days is work-life balance, which I prefer to call work-life harmony, because they're always intertwined with one another. Breaking out of your current situation is very difficult, but you need to sit down and think about, how is this helping me? How is this hurting me? How is this helping my relationships, my family, my friends? So the sad answer is there's no easy answer. The positive answer is we can do it if we put our minds to it, we put our time to it, pay attention to it, and want to do it.
Want to do it. Yeah. About 3 weeks ago, I interviewed a Holocaust survivor. So her name is Dr. Edith Eger. So she wrote this beautiful book, The Choice.
Okay.
So she's from Auschwitz. She survived, and then she moved to America, became a doctor in psychology, and she's been interviewed all over the country, all over the world for for the transformative one. She said that it's important to be willing. So like you say in here, that we have to actually do it, right? So we have to be willing to do it. And do you know when is the best time for us to have that willing to do it?
You're going to have to repeat that question because of the lawnmower outside.
I said, the question was, when do we know that we need to do it?
That's a great question, because we sometimes get on a kind of a treadmill in our lives, and we're afraid to step off to think, because we've got to put food on the table, we've got to take care of the family, take care of your parents, take care of your children, take care of yourself. And sometimes, perhaps, it's too late. Sometimes we get to that realization about this is the time where we should reflect, when we reach that burnout moment, when we reach that emergency situation. It's hard to answer that question. I would hope that most people have people who care about them, friends or family, who they listen to, who can say, hey, I notice you're going off the rails here, or maybe you should step off that treadmill and take some time to think about where you are and what you're doing. But it's very hard. We have to make ends meet. We have to meet our goals, meet our work goals, meet our life goals. But hopefully, if you don't recognize it yourself, you have someone who can help you. In business, one would hope that someone you're working with, or a team leader, or a manager you have, can see some signs and is aware enough to say, hey, I notice you're not yourself, you're not who you were a year ago. Can we help you? Is there something we can do? Let's talk about things.
Wow.
One of the biggest things I ever learned early on in business, we've had performance reviews in organizations, and it became quite clear that if you wait for once a year to sit down with your employee to talk about what's going on, have you met your goals, why haven't, that doesn't work. It's an ongoing process of information sharing, communication, and a performance review at the end of the year should be an obsolete action, because by the time you sit down for that once a year talk, everything should have already been said and understood about performance, about development goals, about concerns for health or whatever. So hopefully people have someone in their lives who are saying, hey, red light, stop for a moment.
Wow.
Think of,
Wow. With that being said, I would love to understand what kind of people that Ken brings to his life, into his circle. Yes.
well, again, I've been fortunate living around the world. So I've had people from different cultures, people from different religions, people from different life situations. And I've been a person who's carried people along. I don't know why. I'm still, once a month, I have a Zoom call, and of course COVID helped this along, with my college buddies who, my roommates and the people who live in the room above us. And one is in Boston, one is in Washington State, one is in Hawaii, one is in New Mexico. I'm in Finland usually, although I'm here now. And I'm missing one person, but I can't remember now. And we just catch up on things. We talk about sports and politics. So, this is 50 years later or more that we've been in touch with one another. We've been fortunate, particularly in the Finland world, for my wife and I to be involved with diplomats in the diplomatic community, former ambassadors, particularly U.S. ambassadors I'm still in touch with, and several others. So it's, again, I guess, being open. You can learn something from anyone. And the tough thing for me is carrying so many people along from all these different countries that we've lived in and friends we've made, because after you leave the country or they leave the country, your world's apart. In December, my wife and I went to a 40th wedding anniversary in Amsterdam for the person, the man, the guy who sat next to me on the airplane when we flew to Paris to study medicine together in Paris. And he and I roomed together. We got an apartment in Paris together. And on and off for the last 50 years, we've stayed in touch. We may see each other. But this is life. My wife is the same way about her old friends, and she used to travel a lot, still does. So we've been fortunate to know people, to love people, to be liked and loved by others. As Marshall Goldsmith says, life is good.
Wow, life is good. Yes, yes. What's your wife doing? Harriet, right?
When I met Harriet, she was in marketing, working for Finnair, traveling around the world doing trade shows, and she was responsible for the window designs when airline offices had windows. She was responsible for things like opening up and doing the PR for their first route to Tokyo and the first route to the US. She brought Mickey Mouse to Finland. But for the last years, particularly as we started moving aboard, she's an artist. And most recently in the years, she's been working in ceramics and has had exhibitions in the UK and Finland and, in other countries, displaying her artwork.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Please tell her I say hello, okay?
Well,
And maybe we can have her as a guest for wisdom also. Since you both accumulate, a lot of great things together to help one another growth, and that's very beautiful. I want to come to the last question. Okay, so that I want to reserve the last question for you to share. For the many years of working in different culture, meeting to different kind of people, doing amazing works. So if there's one wisdom that you want to share to everybody, that can apply to everybody. Okay,
Ooh,
what would that?
I wish you'd given me a little time to think about that ahead of time. Um, I might say that try to look at life in an optimistic, glass half full way. There's a lot of negativity everywhere, and we're living in very difficult times, very conflicting times, very polarized times. And it's easy to despair. It's easy to see negative in the world around us. But I like to think that people are basically good, that they mean well, and that situations can be worked out for the positive. So my advice, having had the experience and maybe the wisdom that goes along with that experience, is to be as optimistic as you can about the future and work towards making the best things happen and creating the best relationships you can.
Beautiful. And such a wonderful conversation, and really, really had a lot of things to reflect, to think, to talk, and to share with my family. And I look forward to share with our audience also. And I'm grateful for you to accept sharing your story, your insights, and your ideas about wisdom, sharing your life stories in here to our audience. And on behalf of the people who listen to this conversation, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a joy to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. So you guys traveling to Finland in the second half of December to celebrate
Correct.
Christmas together. I want to say, send our message to your family when you're there that from Vietnam we love everybody and we wish everybody a happy holiday season there. Okay.
Thank you so much. Always great to talk with you. Say
Thank you
hello to
very
your
much.
wife, by the way, as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will tell Vivian that.
Yeah.
Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye bye.
Bye bye, Ken.